Cool. Might have just gotten a message from the Pope. Saul now urged his aides and his son Jonathan to assassinate David. But Jonathan, because of his close friendship with David, told his father what he was planning. Told him what his father was planning. Tomorrow morning, he warned, you must find a hiding place out in the fields. I'll ask my father to go out there with me, and I'll talk to him about you. Then, I'll tell you everything I can find out. Oop. Yeah, that's right. Like a thirds lineup. The next morning, as Jonathan and his father were talking together, he spoke well of David and begged him not to be against David. He's never done anything to harm you, Jonathan pleaded. He's always helped you in any way he could. Have you forgotten about the time he risked his life to kill Goliath and how the Lord brought a great victory to Israel and as a result? You were certainly happy about it then. Why should you now murder an innocent man by killing him? There is no reason for it all. Finally, Saul agreed and vowed, as the Lord lives, he shall not be killed. Afterwards, Jonathan called David and told him what had happened. Then he took David to Saul, and everything as it was. Everything as it had been before was as it had been before. War broke out shortly after David and led his troops against the Philistines and slaughtered many of them, and put to flight their enemy entire army. All right. One day, Saul was sitting at home, listening to David play his harp as he did. Suddenly, the tormenting spirit of the Lord attacked him. He had his spear in hand and hurled it at David again in an attempt to kill him. But David dodged it out of the way and fled into the night, leaving the spear embedded in the timber in the wall. Saul sent troops to watch David's home and kill him when he came out the next morning. If you don't get away tonight, Michal warned, you'll be dead in the morning. So she helped him. Oh, I forgot. Michal is his wife. That's what it seems. If you don't get away tonight, he'll be dead in the morning. So she helped him get down to the ground through the window. Then she took an idol and put it in his bed and covered it with blankets, with its head and its pillows goat's hair. That's funny. That's a proper use of an idol. You can use an idol secretly when no one sees, when you cover it and it's not important to represent David. There we go. When the soldiers came to arrest David to take him to Saul, she told them that he was sick and couldn't get out of bed. Saul said to him, bring him in his bed. Then, okay, I have to talk about something. I'm a little bit distracted. I'm a little bit excited about something. Something's interesting. I've been talking a lot about the research from Julia Mossbridge, a meta-analysis that she'd put together from other people's research. A meta-analysis is basically like a summary. It's like a study of a bunch of other studies, precognition work. And together, she put together 30 studies in order to invalidate the findings that she came across. They'd have to come across 250 articles that she is unaware of, which is pretty much statistically impossible within the time frame, with all those also having a null effect, you know what I mean, having the file cabinet effect, which is basically the fact that sometimes you do a study, it doesn't show you the results you want to have, and so it gets filed back. Well, that's interesting. So, and there's whatever the filing cabinet effect is really interesting. Basically, what it shows is that the teleological states that are the goal states of the body are orbital memories that are a metaphysical plan. And that's a proper way to put it, because like I have plans, but what about the memories for my body? What about the plans for my body? You kind of have to keep going out. And you can say that metaphysical because non-physical things have causal influence. Basic principle to understand things. You should always understand that everything has a paradoxical identity of both being a wave and a point, being something that's changing and in travel into something else, and something that also just is right now. If you accept the fact that everything is in travel, then you essentially accept the fact that the boundaries of this thing that we call our whole universe is contained by an identity that acts within everything, but is also outside of it, you know? And those states, those resonant states that this plan coheres to, that is the proper word, it is coherence. So think about it like this. The things that you most likely remember, the things that you had too, are something like the climax of a musical orchestra. You know, you want to be like married, and on the day that you're married, you want. I mean, this doesn't make any sense, but you could imagine makes sense for some people. You would want to get married with your kids in the audience, and you'd want to get the most your favorite meal or whatever, and maybe that meal was a callback from something as a child. And it'll be a tune later be played on at the end, you know. And so those goal states of beauty of marriage are what drive the whole process. Because you can think about it this way: what makes an object, what makes a whole, is all the parts of it being the same and fitting together. So that's a simple way of putting that love draws on everything. A really gay way of putting that. Gay way and long way of putting that. Um, you know, and when I'm talking about these sorts of things in coherence, it's not just the colors, and the feelings, the rhythms. It's also the feelings and the emotions and the thoughts. I'll try to talk poetry, and I'm not good at poetry. But anyways, that's how, yeah. Because of that, you can feel those things. That's basically what a research comes down to, is that people can get better at this. And it kind of relates to something that Penrose talked about, is that he believes that the beginning of our universe was the end of another. It's not exactly right, because as I've just said in poetry, it's God who pins the snake. And so while the information at the beginning of a time almost as something that's like orbital that unfolds, you know, as it's expressed, but it's actualized all in one, you know. And so what I'd say to that is that it's easy to say that when people are doing these sorts of precognitions, it's a prediction of what came in the past, you know. Maybe they say that, you know, well, I've seen this character before, I know how he'll behave. And that's true. But just as we have to understand that all points have a wave, we need to understand that all waves also have a point. So there are also genuine cases that she's found, and this is what her research focuses on, the meta-analysis that she's extracted, where the data that they're inferring is genuinely random, as far as humans could ever, as we can do it, you know what I mean? You know, but it doesn't even matter as far as completely modeling it perfectly, because we haven't even modeled gravity or anything like that. Um, The more important things is the models and the predictive validity of the models, and that we know that with every point contains a wave of the whole. You know, so that means even from the beginning, this process couldn't bootstrap itself up if that wasn't the case. You can't start building something without a location. Because imagine, like, if the Legos just weren't the right and it just fizzled out and then stopped, and it's like, well, why did you start if it stopped? If it's not a whole, it can't be a half. You know. So, anyways, precognition is real. A good way to understand it is like the sixth sense. Um, for most novices, because you'll have to start off at some place, and most of you guys won't be as in tune enough from your body because it is a bottom-up process. It has to do with the fact that consciousness is like a seed of identity with boundaries, and that your body is a flow of information, bottom up. And so you can turn off the linguistic categories, shut down that hemisphere, and better get in tune with that. You know what I mean? Letting your spinal cord tell you what to do a little bit. Sounds kind of wrong. But the point is to get them all to agree, to not be out of consistency. You want to be not like Nebuchadnezzar, but a beautiful gold sun head to toe. So, but it's for most people to start out with. You can look at your memories, and your memories can tell you where to go in the future. Where you've been and where you are will tell you where to go. That's something true. And also where you're going will tell you where you've been. So that's where this gets a little complicated. Why you realize that the information actually is reflecting off something metaphysical. Ultimately, it's on you to realize that, to draw closer to it. Way. So that's how I summarize the research. Okay. When the soldiers came to arrest David and take him to Saul, she told them he was sick and couldn't get out of bed. Saul said to bring him up, so that he could kill him. But when they came to carry him out, they discovered that it was only an idol. Why have ye deceived me and let the enemy escape? Saul demanded of Michal. I had to, Michal replied. He threatened to kill me if I didn't help. In that way, David got away, went to Ramah to Samuel, and told him all that Saul had done to him. That's kind of interesting. I don't remember the fate of Michal and how this turns out for her, because as we've just kind of stated, future states shape past ones. But it seems like here, because after you're married off, you get a new name, you get a new family, you're part of a new seed, the line of David. She's caught between the hard and the rock place because Saul would just kill her. But she can stay with Saul by lying, because Saul's kingdom is ultimately of sand. Which is also kind of funny. But David has trust and faith in God. I was not turning her back from her. I mean, he used an idol as a little trick here. In that way, David got away and went to Rabbah to see Samuel, and told him what Saul had done to him. So Samuel took David with him to live in Naioth. When the report reached Saul that David was in Naioth in Ramah, he sent soldiers to capture him. But when they arrived and saw Samuel and the other prophets prophesying, the Spirit of God came upon them, and they also began to prophesy. When Saul heard about what had happened, he sent soldiers, but they too prophesied. The same thing happened a third time. Then Saul himself went to Ramah and arrived at that great well at Saku. Where is Samuel and David? He demanded. Someone told him they were in Naioth, but on the way to Nile, the Spirit of God came upon Saul, and he too began to prophesy. He tore off his clothes and lay naked all day and night, prophesying with Samuel and the prophets. Saul's men were incredulous. "What?" they exclaimed. "Is Saul a prophet too?" David now fled from Naioth to Ramah and found Jonathan. "What have I done?" he exclaimed. "Why is your father so determined to kill me?" "That is not true," Jonathan protested. "I'm sure he's not planning any such thing, for he always tells me everything he's going to do, even the little things, and I know he wouldn't hide something like this from me. It just isn't so." "Of course you wouldn't know about it," David fumed. "Your father knows perfectly well about our friendship, so he said so himself. I'll not tell Jonathan. Why should I hurt him? But the truth is that I am only a step away from death. I swear by it, the Lord and your own soul." "Tell me what to do," Jonathan begged. David replied, "Tomorrow was the beginning of the celebration of the new moon. Always before, I've been with your father for this occasion, but tomorrow I'll hide in the field and stay there until the evening of the third day. If your father asks where I am, tell him that I asked permission to go home to Bethlehem for an annual family reunion. If he says fine, then I will know that all is well. But if he is still angry, then I will know that he is planning to kill me. Do this for my own sworn brother. Do this for me, sworn brother. Or else kill me yourself, because I have sinned against thy father. But don't betray me to him." "Of course not," Jonathan exclaimed. "Look, wouldn't I say so if I knew my father was planning to kill thee?" Then David asked, "How will I know whether or not your father is angry?" "Come out to the field with me," Jonathan replied, and they went out there together. Then Jonathan told David, "I promise, by the Lord God of Israel, that about this time tomorrow or the next day at latest, I will talk to my father about you and let you know at once how he feels about thee. If he is angry and wants you to be killed, then may the Lord kill me if I don't tell you, so you can escape and live. May the Lord be with ye as he used to be with my father. And remember, you must demonstrate the love and kindness of the Lord, not only to me during my own lifetime, but also to my children after the Lord has destroyed all of your enemies." So Jonathan made a covenant with the family of David, and David swore with a terrible curse against himself and his descendants that he should be unfaithful to his promise. But Jonathan made David swear to it again, this time by his love for him, for he loved him as much as he loved himself. Then Jonathan said, "Yes, they will miss you tomorrow, when your place is at the table is empty. By the day after tomorrow, everyone will be asking about you, so be at that hideout where you were before, over the stone pile. I will come out and shoot 3 arrows in front of the pile as though I were shooting at a target. Then I will send a lad to bring out the arrows back. If you hear me tell him, 'There's one on the other side,' then you will know that all is well and that there is no trouble. But if I tell him, 'Go further, arrows are still ahead of thee,' then it will mean that you must leave immediately. And may the Lord make us keep our promises to each other, for he has witnessed them." So David hid himself in the field. When the new moon celebration began, the king sat down at his usual place against the wall. Jonathan sat opposite to him, and Abner sitting beside Saul, but David's place was empty. Saul didn't say anything about it that day, for he supposed that something had happened to David, so he was ceremonially impure. Yes, surely that must be it. But when his place was still empty the next day, Saul asked Jonathan, "Why hasn't David been here for dinner either yesterday or today?" He asked me if he could go to Bethlehem to take part in a family celebration," Jonathan replied. "His brother demanded that he be there, so I told him to go ahead." Saul boiled with rage. "You fool!" He yelled at him.
Do you think I don't know? Do you think I don't know that you want this son of nobody to be the king in your place, Shim?
Oh, whoa.
Do you think I don't know? Do you think I don't know that you want this son of nobody, this Jesse, to be a king in thy place, shaming thyself and your mother? As long as that fellow is alive, he will never be king, Jonathan. Now go, get him, so that I may kill him.
But what has he done? He demanded. Why should he be put to death? Then Saul hurled the spear at Jonathan, intending to kill him. So at last Jonathan realized that his father really meant it when he said that David must die. Jonathan left the table in a fierce anger and refused to eat all that day. He was hurt by his father's shameful behavior towards David, not towards himself. The next morning, as agreed, Jonathan went out to the field and took a young boy with him to gather his arrows. Start running, he told the boy, so that you could find the arrows as I shoot them. So the boy ran, and Jonathan shot an arrow beyond him. When the boy had almost reached an arrow, Jonathan shouted, The arrow is still... Thank you. The arrow is still ahead of thee. Hurry, hurry, don't wait. So the boy quickly gathered up the arrows and ran back to his master. He, of course, didn't understand what Jonathan meant. Only Jonathan and David knew. Then Jonathan gave his bow and arrows to the boy and told him to take them back to the city. As soon as he was gone, David came out, for he had been hiding near the south edge of the field, and they sadly shook hands, tears running down their cheeks until David could weep no more. At last Jonathan said to David, Cheer up, for we have entrusted each other and each other's children to the hands of God forever. So they parted, David going away, Jonathan returning to the city. David went to the city of Nob to see Amalek, the priest. Amalek trembled when he saw him. Why are thee alone? He asked. Why is no one with thee? The king had sent me on a private matter, David lied. He told me not to tell anyone else why I'm here. I have told my men where to meet me later. Now, what's there good to eat? Give me 5 loaves of bread or anything else you can, please. We don't have any regular bread, the priest replied. But there is holy bread, which I guess you can have, only your young men have not slept with any women for a while. Rest assured, David replied. I have never let any of my men run wild while they are in an expedition. And since they stay clean, even in ordinary trips, how much more so on this one? So, since there was no other food available, the priest gave him the holy bread, the bread of the presence that was in place for the Lord of the tabernacle. It had just been replaced that day with fresh bread. Incidentally, Dog the Edenite, Saul's chief herdsman, was there at that time for the ceremonial purification. David asked Amalek if he had a spear or sword he could use. The king's business required such haste, and I left in such a rush that I came without a weapon, David explained. Well, the priest said, I have a sword of Goliath, the Philistine fellow you killed in the valley of Elah, which is wrapped in cloth in the clothes in the closet. You can take that if you want, for there is nothing else here. Just the thing, David replied. Give it to me. Then David hurried on, for he was fearful of Saul, who went to King Ashik in Gath. But Ashik's officers weren't happy about being there. Isn't he the top leader of Israel? They asked. Isn't he the one the people honored at their dances, singing Saul has slain his 1,000 and David 10,000? David heard these comments and was afraid that the king Ashak might do to him, so he pretended to be insane. He scratched the doors and let the spittle flow from down his beard, until finally King Ashak said to his men, must you bring me a madman? We already have enough around here. Should such a fellow as this be my guest?
So David left Gath and escaped to the cave of Adullam, where he and his brothers and other relatives soon joined him. Then others began coming. Those who were any kind of trouble, such as being in debt, or merely disconnected until David was the leader of about 400 men. Later, David went to Mizpah and Moab to ask permission of the king for his father and mother to live there under the royal protection until David knew that God was going with him. What God was going to do for David. They stayed in Moab the entire period when David was living in that cave. One day, the prophet Gad told David to leave the cave and return to the land of Judah. So David went to the forest of Hareth. The news of his arrival in Judah soon reached Saul, and he was in Gibeah at that time, sitting beneath an oak tree, playing with his spear, surrounded by his officers. "Listen here, thy men of Benjamin," Saul exclaimed when he heard the news. "Has David promised you fields, vineyards, commissions in his army? Is that why you turned against your king? For not one of you has ever told me that my own son is on David's side. You're not even sorry for me. Think of that. My son is encouraging David to come and kill me." Then Doeg, an Edomite, who was still standing there with Saul's men, spoke up. "When I was in Moab," he said, "I saw David talking to Malach. The priest, Ahimelech, consulted the Lord to find out what David should do. They gave him food and the sword of Goliath the Philistine. King Saul immediately summoned Ahimelech and all of his family and the other priests in Nob. When they arrived, Saul shouted at them,
Listen to me, you son of Ashtab." "What is it?" quivered Ahimelech.
Why is it you and David have conspired against me? Why did you give him food and sword and talk to God for him? Why did you encourage him to revolt against me and to come here and attack me while I am vulnerable?"
"But sir, is there anyone among your servants who is faithful as David, your son-in-law? Why, he is the captain of your bodyguard and is a highly honored member of your own household. This was certainly not the first time I had consulted God for him. It's unfair for you to accuse me and my family in this matter, for we knew nothing of a plot against you."
You shall die, Ahimelech, along with your entire family.
"Kill these priests, for they are allies and conspirators of David. They knew he was running away from me, and they didn't tell me."
But the soldiers refused to harm the clergy. The king said to Doeg, "You do it." So Doeg turned on them and killed them. 85 priests in all wearing their priestly robes. Then he went to the Nob, the city of the priests, killed the priests' families, men, women, children, babies, all the oxen and the sheep. Only Abiathar, one of the sons of Ahimelech, escaped and fled to David.
You don't realize it's a play on the genocide that God asked Samuel, God asked Saul to do against the center of evil. But he wanted their power. But when he finds out the priests of Israel are giving the word of God to David, he wipes out all of them, even God's oxen.
When he told them what Saul had done, Abiathar, David exclaimed,
"I knew it. When I saw Doeg there, I knew he would tell Saul. I have caused the death of all your father's family, Stay here with me, and I will protect you with my own life. Any harm to you will be over my dead body." One day, news came to David that the Philistines were at Kelaith, robbing in the threshing floors. David asked the Lord, "Shall I go and attack them?" "Yes, go and save Keilah," the Lord told him. But David's men said, "We're afraid, even here in Judah. We certainly don't want to go to Keilah to fight the whole Philistine army." David asked the Lord again, and the Lord replied, "Go down to Keilah, for I will help you conquer the Philistines." Then they went to Keilah and slaughtered the Philistines and confiscated their cattle until the people of Keilah were saved. Abiathar, the priest who went to Keilah with David, taking his ephod with him to get the answers for David and from the Lord. Saul soon learned that David was at Keilah. "Good, we've got him now. God has delivered him to me, for he has trapped himself in a walled city." So Saul mobilized his entire army to march in Keilah to besiege David and his men. But David learned of Saul's plan and told Abiathar, the priest, to bring the ephod and ask the Lord what he should do. O Lord God of Israel," David said, "I have heard that Saul is planning to come and destroy Keilah because I am here. Will the men of Keilah surrender me to him? And will Saul actually come as I have heard? O Lord of Israel, please tell me." And the Lord said, "He will come. These men of Keilah." "And will these men of Keilah betray me to Saul?" And the Lord replied, "Yes, they will betray you." So David and his men, about 600 of them now, left Keilah and began roaming the countryside. Word soon reached Saul that David had escaped, so he didn't go any further after it all. David now lived in the wilderness caves in the hill country of Ziph. One day, near Horosh, he received the news that Saul was on the way to Ziph to search him and kill him. Saul hunted him day after day, but the Lord didn't let him find him. Prince Jonathan now went to find David. He met him in Horosh and encouraged him in his faith in God. "Don't be afraid," Jonathan reassured him. "My father will never find you. You're going to be king of Israel, and I will be next to you, as my father is well aware." So the two of them renewed their pact of friendship, and David stayed at Horosh while Jonathan returned home. But now the men of Ziph went to Saul and Gibli and betrayed David to him. "We know where he is hiding," they said. "He's in the caves of Horosh, on the Halakai hill, down in the southern part of the wilderness. Come on down, sir, and we will catch him for thee, and your fondest wish will be fulfilled. "Well, praise the Lord," Saul said. "At last, someone has had pity on me. Go check again to be sure where he is staying, and see where he is staying, and who has seen him there, for I know that he is a very crafty fellow. Discover his hiding places, and then come back to me with more definite report. Then I'll go with thee, and if he is in the area at all, I will find him, and if I have to search every inch of that entire land, I will." So the men of Ziph returned home. But when David heard that Saul was on his way to Ziph, he and his men went even further into the wilderness of Moab in the southern part of the desert. But Saul followed them there. He and David were now on opposite sides of the mountain. As Saul and his men began to close in, David tried his best to escape, but it was no use. But just as the message reached Saul that the Philistines were raiding Israel again, so Saul quit the chase and returned to the fight of the Philistines. Ever since that time, the place where David was camped was called the Rock of Escape. David then went to live in the caves of Adji.
Okay. I like that. O Father, who art in heaven, thy will be done, thy kingdom come, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and lead us not into temptation, as we forgive those who've trespassed against us. For thine is the kingdom, the glory, and the power for eternity. Amen. I compressed the line there on accident. You're supposed to say, forgive us of our debts, and forgive those, our debtors, trespassers, debtors. All right, anyways, thank you.